Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the first of several special spring live streams here on the Trip Hacks DC YouTube channel. If you're joining me on the live chat, welcome. Go ahead and say hello, say good morning or afternoon if it's that time of day in your part of the world, and let me know where you are tuning in from. Welcome to everyone who is tuning in now. If you're watching this on the replay, welcome. Leave me a comment after you finish the video and let me know what your favorite part was. We're going to be checking out several things today, including a small number of early blooming flowers and trees and some outdoor art. Good morning, everyone. Eddie. Good morning, Eddie. Good to see you. Bright and early. Patricia. Good morning from Cancun. Good morning, Patricia. Do you live in Cancun or are you on vacation? All right, we've got visitors from the Caribbean. Topolino from Tel Aviv. What time of day is it in Tel Aviv? Topolino. And Jason, tuning in from Coventry in the UK. And we have a question, can people visit Washington, D.C. right now? Well, you can visit, but a lot of things are still closed. So I highly recommend watching a few of my most recent update videos to find out about that. Pat from Minnesota, good to see you, Pat. Had you on tour last year, 2 years ago. I've lost track of time a little bit. As you can see, the Capitol Dome behind me here. Excellent news. The fence is starting to come down. I just walked past it right now, and I'm very happy to see that. Topolino says it is 16:30 in Tel Aviv. Elizabeth from Malaysia. What time of day is it in Malaysia? I'm very curious. Whenever I do these in the morning, of course, lots of viewers from other parts of the world. In the west coast of the U.S., it is only 7:30 a.m., so I don't expect anyone to wake up early to join me from the U.S. All right. Well, we will get started on the walk. As I said, the Capitol off in the distance over there. We've got the Washington Monument and the National Mall off in the distance over there. Elizabeth says it's 10:32 p.m. in Malaysia, so thank you for staying up late in Malaysia. And KP Lee, also from Malaysia. Yes, KP visited Washington, D.C. I took him on a tour, I think 2 years ago. But like I said, lost track of time. Abby Walters, good to see you, Abby. I'm happy to do this. And Mike, tuning in from Chevy Chase. I always forget, Mike, if you're on the Chevy Chase, Maryland side or the D.C. side. All right, Patricia lives in Cancun. Hopes to visit D.C. soon. Are museums still closed? Yes, many museums are still closed, but some have reopened. Today, in the next hour, I'm going to take you to a Smithsonian outdoor art exhibit and a National Gallery of Art outdoor art exhibit. So the outdoor art is reopening, and some of the private paid museums are reopening as well. So I know that people like to come for the Smithsonian, which are the free museums, but they have not reopened yet. Carlos from the Dominican Republic. Thank you for tuning in, Carlos. Jason says, sadly, had to cancel the planned trip for August. Yes, Jason, I do have 2 recommended hotels near Union Station. If you go to triphacksdc.com/hotels, you can see all of my recommended hotels, including the 2 that are located near Union Station. And Mike is tuned in from the Maryland side of the Chevy Chase boundary. Yes, Eddie says they found a picture from 2019 outside the African American History and Culture Museum, which is off in the distance over there. Food trucks typically line up on the street over there. All right, so this is one of my favorite very early bloomers. Try to get as close as I can so you can see what a very early blooming cherry tree looks like. This is not what the tidal basin looks like right now, but this is what a very small number of early bloomers looks like right now. Now, the cool thing about the cherry trees is that they include information about what type of tree you're looking at. So this is called a Heigen cherry. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. From Japan. There are about a dozen different varieties of cherry trees in Washington, D.C., So as you can see here, this variety, most certainly not in bloom, and you can see it's just a few buds, and they're barely poking out. I'm not even sure if the camera can pick up the detail, but these buds are not quite ready for the big time yet. All right, Gilberto tuned in from the wharf, just a few miles away from where I am right now. Christopher from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Used to live in Maryland and misses DC trips. And Christy from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Yes, I'm glad you brought up the weather, Christy. The Capital Weather Gang in the Washington Post rated today a 9 out of 10. And the person who wrote the article, he said, it's a 9 out of 10, and if it had been over 65 degrees, then it would have been a 10 out of 10. So I have arrived at the Smithsonian Hirshhorn Museum Sculpture Garden, and I'm going to go inside and show you around before we head over to the Smithsonian Castle. And one of the cool things about this spot is that very few people know about it. So they're doing it as a one-way route, so they have arrows pointing, and this is the only entrance, I believe, that's open, as they want people to all move in the same direction. So we'll have to follow the arrows, and those in a moment. Bart from Buffalo, New York. Yeah, if you've just tuned in, let me know where you are tuned in from in the world. So this is some of the modern art that you can expect to see in a sculpture garden like this. Now that big concrete round building off in the distance, that's the Hirshhorn Modern Art Museum. I tell people on tours, modern art, you either love it or hate it. So as we walk through here, you might say, man, I don't get any of this. And that's okay, because sometimes I don't either. But this one is called Ex Cathedra. I guess it's meant to be a sort of cathedral. This is the kind of thing you can expect to see in a modern art museum like this. Okay, let's see. LFPG 100 is tuned in from Mars, just kidding, from Virginia. And Fountain Pen Teacher, welcome, from Pennsylvania. So as you can see, they've got this set up with these one-way path arrows. This little sculpture garden is pretty interesting because it's almost hidden. It's right in the middle of the National Mall. That's the Air and Space Museum right there. As you can see, I was just up on the National Mall a moment ago. And because of the fact that this is a few steps below ground, if you don't want to come in here, you're not going to accidentally stumble in here. You're just going to walk right on past. All right, now this one, speaking of modern art, this one is called We Come in Peace. This is definitely modern art, if I've ever seen it. So let me know what you think about modern art. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you think it's interesting? Or do you prefer the more traditional art? Topolino asks if I would ever do a tour around the Hillwood Estate Gardens. I certainly will consider it. I'll have to check what kind of restrictions they have in place there. Stephanie, good morning from Illinois. Thanks for tuning in, Stephanie. And Iris is coming to see the cherry blossoms. Be very careful, Iris. They are only in bloom for a short period of time. The current prediction is April 2nd to 5th, but I wouldn't be surprised if that changes because there are very few trees in bloom right now. I think they might get pushed back a little bit. Gary tuned in from Oxford, Wisconsin. I'm very happy to do this. Gary? And Marcus, watching from Stevenage in the UK. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Looking forward to visiting DC. Patricia says, scary. This one right here is called The Burgers of Calais. Now I have to tell you guys, I am not an artist. I am not an art connoisseur. So I really can't give much information about any of these specific art pieces other than what's on the little card next to them. All right, Carlos asks about parking near the Homewood Suites downtown. I have a video about parking in DC. Highly recommend checking that out. There are many parking garages in DC. They are not free. Don't expect to find free parking, but there are more than enough places to park your car. All right, so this is the middle, I guess the very center of the sculpture garden. This piece here is called 4 Gordon Burnshaft. So we'll have to do a little bit of research to find out who Gordon Burnshaft is. It's a two-way mirror made out of stainless steel, wood, and stone. So right now, I think I see through it. I don't see the mirror. I guess as we move around it, we're supposed to see it turn into a mirror. We'll see if that actually happens. So far, I can't really tell. The water features are still turned off. Unfortunately, they do get turned off for the winter. And the Hirshhorn is building something new in here, so the entire garden is not currently available. Well, thank you, Alberto. I don't know if I'm the best in DC, but I like to think I can give a worthwhile tour. Jill, tuned in from Austin, Texas. An art lover who knows that it is pronounced Calais. So my knowledge of art, I have to warn you, is not very good. So the sculpture garden is under a bit of construction, as you can see. They're planning something special, and they're revitalizing the garden, which I think is good. It's always good to redo these spaces and make them a little bit nicer, keep up with the times. So this is the art lab space, sorry. Unfortunately, it has been closed for quite a while. Speaking of mirrors, you can see me in this window. But it is a pretty cool space when it is open. It's meant for kids and teens to do digital art. It's pretty cool. I have not personally done it, but I have known some folks who did and spoke highly of the experience. All right, so this is a relatively small one, especially since it's not completely open. So I'm going to head back out. One of the cool things about coming to the National Mall on a Sunday morning is that it is relatively quiet. Obviously, there's a few folks around, so I don't want to say it's completely empty. But compared to what it's going to look like around noon or 1 o'clock today, it is quite quiet. Today is going to be an excellent weather day, so I fully expect lots of folks to come out and enjoy the weather.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Now, if you're just tuning in, let me know where in the world you're tuned in from so that I can say hello. This guy over here always catches my eye. This one is called the Great Warrior of Montauban. It's a statue made out of bronze. Most statues in here are made from bronze. All right, so let's go ahead and head on out of the sculpture garden and move on to our next stop, which is the Smithsonian Castle and the Enid Haupt garden out back. All right, Alberto asks, do I have any idea when DC will be open for visitors? Well, that's kind of a loaded question. You can visit right now if you want, but not everything's open. So it's all about what you want to do and what kind of expectations you have. I don't make predictions about when specific things will reopen because I'll probably be wrong, and I don't want anyone relying on my predictions to plan their trip and then get disappointed. When the Smithsonian reopened its museums last summer, they opened them kind of one at a time. They opened some of the less popular ones first, and then they opened some of the more popular ones. Some of them never reopened at all. And typically they didn't announce it, really far in advance. there would just be an announcement on, I don't know, Friday, and said, hey, on Monday, we're reopening the American History Museum. So as far as planning goes, it makes planning kind of impossible. So basically, if you're planning a trip to DC this spring, my advice is expect no Smithsonian museums to be open, and then be pleasantly surprised if they are. But the private paid museums have mostly reopened. The Spy Museum, the Bible Museum, the Phillips Collection, those are all reopened. And the outdoor art, like the sculpture garden I just took you to. Now, of course, it's a small sculpture garden. You're not going to spend half a day in there. We just spent, 10 minutes in there. So it's cool to see, but you're not going to make a full day of sightseeing out of it. All right, so Venus, I hope that answers your question as well. Jason tuned in from South Carolina. Welcome, Jason. And Marcus asks, what's the music in the background? Good question. Marcus, let me show you before I go over to the Smithsonian Castle. If you can see in between these two sculptures right here, there's a tent off in the distance, and that is called David's Tent. It is some kind of church service that they have over there. It's been around for a very, very long time. I don't really know much about it besides that, but that is what the music is coming from. Venus, I'm happy to share this information with everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Now, this building right in front, this is called the Smithsonian's Arts and Industries Building. If you have ever come to DC and taken a tour with me and we've gone near this, I told you that it's closed and has been closed. It's basically a vacant building. It hasn't been used in a very, very long time. They did do an exterior renovation, I'm guessing now, I want to say approximately 10 years ago. Maybe it was less than 10. So the exterior of the building looks quite beautiful. And there were lots of ideas tossed around over the years about what to do with the building itself, and never really resolved on anything. So it's basically been a vacant building for all these years. And just a few weeks ago, they announced that they would be opening an exhibit called Futures. It's going to be super cool, in my opinion. Let's see if I can get zoomed out here. So I think this is an awesome looking building. Let me know what you think. If you can see at the very top, 1879 is when this one opened. So it has been here for quite a while. But at the Future exhibit, from what I've read, you'll be able to do things like try on a futuristic spacesuit. You'll be able to do yoga with a robot yoga teacher. All kinds of futuristic things. Ludin says, coming to DC the second week of April, we'll at least be able to see outdoor things. That is correct. You will be able to see some outdoor things. And Eddie, really can't wait to visit the Arts and Industries building. Yes, neither can I. Now, if you are really interested in the Arts and Industries building, a video on this YouTube channel that has very few views is from the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. I want to say 2017. It was the year when they had the circus theme, and they had the Arts and Industries building here open for the festival, and they had acrobats and all kinds of cool stuff flying around on the inside. And that was one of the rare opportunities to get to actually go inside this building. And it was excellent for that year because they had the AC cranked up. And it was miserably hot and humid that summer. So the last time I was inside the Arts and Industries building was for that. So search on the Trip Hacks DC YouTube channel for Smithsonian Folklife Festival, or I will try to add it to the description after the live video is up, people can check it out. All right, so with that said, we will now head over to the Smithsonian Castle, which is this building directly in front of me here. But more than just the castle, we want to go see the garden on the outside. Now, I was originally going to do this live video 1 week ago, And the reason is because last year, in 2020, the magnolia flowers at the garden were completely in bloom before things even started closing down for COVID. So I was just watching a video on fellow YouTuber Andy Bellicotti's channel where he was showing how awesome this garden looked last year. And I believe the video was published on March 9th, so he must have been there on March 8th or March 7th, and the flowers were in full bloom. So it was awesome. So my original intent this year was to go in the middle of March to do this live video at the garden and show you the magnolia flowers in full bloom. But last weekend, they were not blooming at all. And so I waited until this weekend, and as far as I could tell from my walk over, they're still not in full bloom. So we'll see them in any case, and even though they're not in their full glory, we'll be able to at least see something. Alberto asks, the White House is not open for visitors yet? Nope, it is not. Most indoor sites are not open for visitors. And the other cool thing going on, before we go into the main part of the garden, is Art in Bloom. It's an official National Cherry Blossom Festival event this year. So if you watched my update video a couple weeks ago, you remember I said that there's going to be a scavenger hunt. And these are the art pieces that are hidden all around the city. Now there's a few of them all concentrated right here to give you a bit of a preview of what they look like. And they're these little flower chair looking like things. How would you describe them? Like chairs?
I think I saw people sit in them, so I'm like, I think we can.
Yeah, it seems like the opportunity to sit in them and take a photo. But in any case, we have 3 of them over here. Some information about our friendship with Japan. And then the idea is that if you find these and you use the hashtag that is included down on the bottom, then the National Cherry Blossom Festival will enter you into contests to win some prizes. So I think that that is kind of cool. But these are a limited time only art. They're all over the city and the suburbs. So there's 3 of them right together over there. But if you travel around, I've already found several of them. So we're still a little bit early, and I wish that the flowers had bloomed a little bit earlier because this whole scene would be lit up in pink right now. But unfortunately, they are still buds, even the magnolias. So these are magnolia flowers. These are not the world-famous Washington, D.C. cherry blossoms. But you can see, here's one that's just barely starting to open up right there. But for the most part, they're still buds. Here's another one that's just starting to open up right there. Jose asks, is this the National Garden? This is called the Enid A. Haupt Garden at the Smithsonian Castle. I don't think we have something that's called the generic National Garden. We have the National Gallery of Art. And one thing that I heard recently that seems obvious in hindsight, but I don't know why I never realized it, is that this is a rooftop garden. And that is because we are on top of the Sackler Gallery, which is over there, and the National Museum of African Art, which the door is right over there. And then under my feet, down here, are the exhibits. And so this is literally a rooftop garden. Eddie Saunders, thank you for the super chat, friend. I'm very happy to do the live video. And yes, I know that Smithsonian Castle is one of your favorite buildings because if everyone looks at Eddie's profile picture, it is the Smithsonian Castle with the magnolias in full bloom. So if you actually want to look at see what it looks like when they're in full bloom, check out Eddie's profile picture. So try to do the wide angle here, and they are just starting to bloom, not in full bloom yet. A bit of a bummer, I'm not going to lie about that. but it is pretty cool nonetheless. Fountain Pen Teacher asks, are the White House gardens open for visits at all? So twice per year, historically, I need to say historically because everything is in the before times and we don't know how things are going to change post-COVID. But historically, there would be 2 weekends every year, one in the fall and one in the spring, where the White House would open the gate and let people from the public come in and walk around the gardens. I don't believe they did it last year. I have not heard any word about a spring garden tour this year, and so we'll just have to wait and see. Tony Lynch, hello Tony, thank you for in. If you've just tuned in and you haven't already told everyone where you are tuned in from, where in the world, go ahead and leave a live chat and let everyone know. Now this tree over here looks like the buds are a little bit farther along. These magnolia flowers are starting to come out. They're obviously still not fully in bloom yet. And now I wonder if the reason why this tree is farther along than the tree I showed you 2 minutes ago is because this one is in the sun and that last one is in the shade. So if there are any botanists or horticulturalists or plant experts in the live chat, let me know. Is that something that may be true, or am I just speculating without any evidence? But it is quite sunny over here compared to the tree I showed you where the buds were still mostly not opened. Peter Hedberg says he likes to see the blue sky. Yes, the last few live streams I did, there was no blue sky. It was very much a winter scene. And Alistair from Virginia, but living in Philadelphia. Brent, Canadian $10. Thank you for the super chat, friend. Very much appreciate that. I think that's Canadian, right? CA. So when these are in bloom, these are quite beautiful. And you'll see a lot of photos that are from this angle right here. Now, I'm not a professional photographer, but you'll either see the flowers are in bloom and then the bouquet on the castle in the background there, or vice versa. Depends on how artsy you're trying to get. Now, I love this spot. This is also a photographer's dream spot right over here. This is called the Moongate Garden. It's very architectural. And so you walk through the stone here. Unfortunately, the water's still turned off because we still are getting some cold days and nights here. Alistair, didn't even know there was a castle in DC. Oh, there certainly is a castle. It is the Smithsonian Castle. It was the first building built as part of the Smithsonian Institution and one of the oldest buildings in the city. Most of Washington, D.C. that existed in the 1800s was torn down and rebuilt. This part was not. So we have the sign of the dragonfly, a cool little art piece over here with these dragonflies floating above the water when the water is turned on. Ludin asks, do I use a gimbal? Yes, I do have a gimbal. It's the DJI Osmo gimbal, the one that all the YouTube people like to use. And Brent, yes, CA is Canada. Where do you live in Canada, Brent? Do you live in the city, in the country? I haven't been to Canada in quite a while. Haven't been anywhere in quite a while. Have not traveled outside of Washington, D.C. in a long time. Now there is a yellow flower up ahead, a little bit different from the pink magnolias. This one is blooming, one of the few that is. So these are pretty cool, and this is called, you can see the little card there. I believe the translation is paper bush. This yellow flower is from China. The magnolias, I believe, are also from China. If there are any plant or flower experts in the live chat that can confirm that. Today I'm doing a live stream on two things that I am decidedly not an expert on: plants and outdoor art, or I guess art in general. Yeah, this yellow flower, really the only one in the entire garden that's fully bloomed. Quite beautiful, if I may say. Alistair says, wow, so purty. Can't disagree with that assessment. Yeah, so one of the, let me back up here. One of the most famous photographs of the sculpture garden, and I have one of these myself. So if you go way, way back on the TripHacks DC Instagram account, you can probably find it, is this stone here with pink, an explosion of pink in the background. Olga is tuned in from Russia. Thanks for joining, Olga. What time is it in Russia, in the part of Russia where you live? And Tatiana says, so pretty. Yes, I'm happy to do the stream. I'm sorry that the magnolias are not quite there yet. But I'm planning to do 5 more of these streams over the next few weekends. So my plan right now is to do some early blooming cherry blossoms near the Washington Monument next Saturday. And the reason I planned to do that is because there are a few trees near the Washington Monument that typically bloom a week or two earlier than the rest of them on the tidal basin. That said, the bloom seems to be taking its good old time this spring. We've had quite a few cold days in March, and so if they're not in bloom, I'll come back here to the castle next Saturday and redo the walk through this garden with the magnolias in full bloom, because I feel like while this is quite nice, this is just not doing justice to what the bloom would look like if it was in full bloom. Olga's tuning in from St. Petersburg. It's evening over in St. Petersburg right now. Yeah, it's funny that when I do a live stream in the morning, especially Sunday morning, a lot of the viewers are from Europe or from elsewhere in the world, which I totally get, because it's 10:30 in New York City, in Washington, D.C., and I don't know, people like to sleep in on Sunday. People like to go to church on Sunday, and so I totally get if you have other things to do on your Sunday morning, but if you're in Europe, it's already later in the afternoon. So what a great way to enjoy your Sunday than to tune into a live stream of Washington, D.C. All right, Jason asks about hotel recommendations. So historically, I said if you forced me to choose one area to stay, it would be the downtown area near the White House. I don't know if I would say that's still the case. I have to rethink it, because a lot of the museums are still closed and a lot of things near the White House are still closed. So I think the Wharf would probably be a fun area to stay. I think, I believe I have an area on that list called the Navy Yard area. Baseball is returning. Probably going to be really hard to get a ticket, but it will be lively in that area when baseball returns. And also, a lot of restaurants are open in that area. So if you are coming in the next few months, that would be my suggestion. But I will have to reevaluate all of my hotel recommendations at some point. All right, Alistair, ask your question. I don't know if I'll know the answer, but you can ask it. Carissa asks, is the Smithsonian Garden the best place to see a bloom right now? Well, there's really nowhere that's a good place to see a bloom right now, because not very much is in bloom. But the garden that I just walked through, the Enid Haupt garden, typically has the earliest bloom. So I suspect that probably sometime midweek, and probably for sure by next weekend, that one will be in bloom. Eddie Saunders says the wharf is great fun, enjoys the river taxi. Yes, I just got an email newsletter from the wharf, and they said that the water taxi is returning. And so it had been closed basically for the entire year of COVID. There was no water taxi. So double check on the wharf website about the water taxi to see exactly what date it is returning. Andy Felicati, thank you for joining. I don't know if you joined when I was telling everyone to go watch your video of the magnolias at the Smithsonian Castle, because I just walked through, and as you told me, they are not fully in bloom yet. So quite a bummer that we are a little too early. But as I said, next Saturday, I plan to take a walk over to the Washington Monument and see if there are any early blooming cherry trees over there. But if not, I will take you back here to the Smithsonian Castle, to the Enid Haupt garden, and look around. So we have the National History Museum in front right there. That's the Washington Monument, so that's where I'm planning to go next week and see if there are any early blooming trees. And then, of course, the Smithsonian Castle. I can't remember who said that they didn't know there were castles in D.C. Is it that it doesn't look like this is a castle? Or you just never noticed it before? Now, this guy up here, I always point out when I walk past, because the Smithsonian Institution is named after a fellow named James Smithson, and it is entirely logical to walk past a statue of a man outside the Smithsonian building and say, cool, that's him. And in fact, it is not. This guy is Joseph Henry. He was a scientist. He helped develop and invent the telegraph. He helped invent the electric doorbell. And he is also the first secretary of the Smithsonian. This guy was a hard worker. He was basically the secretary of the Smithsonian until the day that he died. Never took a retirement. He was the first and perhaps the best known secretary of the Smithsonian. All right, looks like I've missed some chats here. Yes, Andy Felicati is an excellent photographer, and if you want to learn how to photograph the sites in Washington, D.C., you should watch his videos. I'm a terrible photographer, but I have at least learned a few tips from him. And Gilberto says water taxi started Friday. Excellent. And Gilberto would know because they're staying over there. Are you staying at a hotel or somewhere else over there, Gilberto? And a question about the LGBT neighborhoods. So historically, DuPont Circle was considered the best-known LGBT neighborhood, but I think there's a lot of debate nowadays about whether there is one at all or if it's basically spread out everywhere. Oh, and also Andy gave you a good answer to that question. It's funny that Joseph Henry invented the electric doorbell. I wonder if the younger generations know what an electric doorbell is. We now all have the Ring and other smart doorbells. Andy asks if I'm going to go to the new Eisenhower Memorial. Wasn't planning on it, but if people want to vote for it, leave a live chat. So you want me to walk over to the Eisenhower Memorial. It's nearby, so not a problem to walk over there. Yes, Eddie, this is a great view of the Capitol. If you tuned in after the first 5 minutes of the live stream, you missed when I said that the fence around the Capitol is coming down. I just walked past it on my way over to start the stream, so very, very excited about that. So I am headed over to the National Gallery of Art Sculpture Garden next. The reason I'm doing it in this order is because the National Gallery of Art Sculpture Garden is open only from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. The Smithsonian Gardens, I believe, are open sunrise to sundown. Had a hard time finding that information on the Smithsonian website. But I know that there are limited hours for the National Gallery of Art, so I wanted to try to get over there right at 11 when they opened, because my hunch is that it's going to get quite crowded here on the National Mall around lunchtime as people want to start coming out and enjoying a nice day. All right, we've got 2 votes for the Eisenhower Memorial, which is nearby, so it's not a big deal to walk over there afterwards. I did a recorded video about the Eisenhower Memorial when it first opened, and I think people were kind of meh about it. It's a very nice memorial, but I'm not going to lie, it's no Lincoln Memorial. It's no Jefferson Memorial. It's no MLK Memorial. It's quite nice, but there's just something about it that you feel like it could be better. Well, I should stop biasing everyone with my opinion about it before we go over there. But we've got a few votes for it, so I will attempt to go over there after we see the sculpture garden. So here it is, the National Gallery of Art Sculpture Garden. Anybody recognize that building in the background there? Bev says, thank you for doing this. Of course, happy to do it. Yes, Andy Felicati says the Eisenhower Memorial is better than a construction site. Well, Andy, if you like construction sites, the Air and Space Museum is a giant construction site and will be for many years. So there's something about that little corner over there on Independence Avenue. Seems to be a forever construction site. Yes, LFPG Archives, the National Archives. That's the building in the background with the columns on it. You know your DC buildings. Well done. So to answer the question from earlier, this is the David's Tent up ahead. And they have been having church services in here for a long time. Not sure exactly when it started. Definitely as long as I've been a tour guide. They've been doing stuff in there. But people always want to know, what is up with the tent? Especially when you're walking past or biking past and you hear the music blaring. Jason asks, is Metro fully open? Just wear a mask? Yes, mostly yes. It is, I believe, completely open. All the stations are open. I think it's some of the stations that have like multiple entrances. Not all of the entrances are open. Like Farragut North has several entrances. I think only one of them is. But yes, masks are mandatory, but otherwise you can ride the Metro. Andy assumes I know the history about a lot of things I don't know the history of. Like the topic of today's video, art and flowers. So this is the National Gallery of Art Sculpture Garden. This is the bigger of the two. This is the one that's not underground, so you can actually see it when you're walking past. And this one right here, my personal favorite. Actually, I should take that back. This is my second favorite. I'll show you my first favorite in a moment. This is a three-dimensional house, and the idea is that as you walk past it, at first it looks like you're walking into the house, and then it looks like you're walking away from the house. Did you guys see that? Did you see that? Should I do it again? It's one of those optical illusions. So as you go past, it looks like you're looking into it on the inside, and it looks like you're looking from the outside. All right, Andy says that David's tent has to do with a loophole in the permitting system. I believe I've heard that before. These are horses, headless horses, painted red. So what do you guys think about these sculpture art pieces? Thumbs up, thumbs down, don't care. I'm always curious what people think about these various art pieces. Now this building right here, this big green building, this is called the Pavilion Cafe. People ask me for recommendations for where to eat on the National Mall. I wouldn't say this is like an amazing gourmet Michelin star place to eat, but you could do a lot worse than to come in here and grab lunch from the Pavilion Cafe. All right, here is my #1 favorite sculpture art in the sculpture garden. So, first person to guess what this is and where it's from will get a thumbs up from me. But I think this is the coolest one. If you are a world traveler, you certainly know what this is. LFPG is quick on the draw with the correct answer, the Paris Metro. Everybody knows this one's Paris. Absolutely. Pierre L'Enfant, the designer of Washington, D.C., was a Frenchman. Took inspiration from Paris. Let's see, Andy says, if I keep walking forward, I'll find tree branches that I can walk through. Let's see if I can find it, Andy. Now, I'm actually pleasantly surprised to see that the water is turned on today. Let me try to reorient here. Morning. So, if you've been here in the winter, you might have ice skated on this spot. This is where the ice rink is set up. And if you've been here in the summer, you might have come here to hear jazz in the garden. Yes, I agree. This is very pretty water. I imagine if I was a talented photographer, I would frame up this shot like this somehow. It would, of course, be better if the trees were in bloom, but we'll have to wait a little bit longer to see that. Of course, a very popular photo is this one that these two folks just took over here. You want to get your photo from this spot right here so that you can get the water, you can get the National Archives, and they've got the pink banner up for the National Cherry Blossom Festival. All right, I think I missed some comments, so let me try to go back and see. All right. Bev says, a couple years ago, there was an albino squirrel at the sculpture garden. It was beautiful. That's interesting. I don't know if it was at this sculpture garden. We can look for it, but I don't recall seeing that one here. All right, so I'm now on, I think, the north side of the garden, so I'm not quite sure where that branch is that you were mentioning, Andy. I'll try to find it. The albino squirrel is an NGA staple. Where can I find it? I often feel like I'm just wandering around in the sculpture garden when I come in here. All right, folks must know about this one. Since I have a European audience today, I'm sure many of you can translate. The Amor. I actually did take language in school, so it's embarrassing that I cannot pronounce it. But this translates, of course, into love in Spanish, French, I think, Latin, definitely Latin, Italian, might be spelled slightly differently. So if you speak any of those languages, Portuguese too, I think, if I recall. We've got Spanish, French, Latin, Italian, Portuguese. Let me know if this translates to love, or if there's any other languages, let me know. And yes, it is inspired by the love statue in Philadelphia. Okay, it is not correct in French. French is amour with a U. Spanish is spelled that way, though. All right, so help guide me to the albino squirrel. Because I've now walked around the perimeter, have not come across the albino squirrel yet. And let's see, in Italian it's amore with an E on the end, but not sure. Everyone's busting out Google Translate right now to find out how to spell this in all the languages. Look to the right, branches. Ah, these branches. Are people supposed to walk through this? I don't want to get in trouble. It's unclear whether I'm supposed to walk through this. Should I do it, Andy? Okay, well, I don't want to be a bad example, but Andy's giving me permission to walk through them, so here we go. Obviously, lots of people have walked through here because you can see the spot in the dirt that's completely worn down. Well, that was fun. And that was on the north side, not the south side. Yes, Eddie says there's a path under them, all good. There's a story about Walt Disney that's in a lot of business, college business textbooks about how people were trampling the flowers at Disney World, and one of the managers said, "Mr. Disney, we need to put up a sign and tell people not to go here." And he said, "No, we need to remove these flowers and put in a path because that's where the people want to go." All right, we're still unsure about the albino squirrel. Look away if you're afraid of spiders. This is one giant 8-legged spider right here. And can you guess the name of this artwork? It's called Spider. This corner over here actually has some cool things in it. All right, so whenever I have a family with kids, I always ask them what they think this thing is. So without looking it up, everyone should type into the live chat what they think this is. And don't say a sculpture, because obviously it's a sculpture art. This is an actual thing. All right, paintbrush is the first guess. Paintbrush is not correct, I will say right now. A wheel, a pizza cutter. I like pizza cutter, that's a good guess. Eraser, roller skate wheel. Okay, roller skate wheel is usually the first guess. Okay, so if you have ever used a typewriter, this is the eraser on a typewriter. So let's see, who said eraser up here? Fierce Mice said eraser. Didn't specify typewriter eraser, but I'm going to give you the point for that one. Gary did say typing eraser, so you guys can share the prize between typing eraser and eraser. So on an old-fashioned typewriter, when you made a mistake, you needed to use the eraser to erase the ink, and that's what the gizmo looked like. Most people do guess roller skate, at least the kids, I think, guess roller skate. This tree is starting to bloom. This one's interesting. We've got some that are still completely buds, like this one I'm trying to focus on here. Won't focus. And then you've got some that are almost completely open. So this one's interesting to me. Usually they all open around the same time. David West says, used to work with those every day. What kind of job did you have, David, that you used to type on a typewriter? I'm curious. Fountain pen teacher says an eraser. Correct. but not the first. Fierce Mice says a win for old folks on that trivia. Hey, I used a typewriter when I was a kid, so I don't know how old we're talking here. Now, if you had a certain type of typewriter that didn't even have the eraser, you had to use whiteout. That was terrible. I'm terrible at typing. I make a million typos. And so I always need to go back and fix them. So I would have been terrible on a typewriter. David West says, worked in advertising. I imagine many office jobs, you would have used a typewriter. Now, when I was in college, I learned that in the old days, if you were a professor or you were a researcher and you wrote a report, someone in the department, like a secretary, would type it up for you on the typewriter. All right, we've brought all the typewriter aficionados out of the woodwork. But the cool thing is the next time you go to the sculpture garden, you will know that that piece of art is not a roller skate, not a paintbrush, and not a pizza cutter. It is an eraser. I think it would be pretty cool if they had a pizza cutter, sculpture of a pizza cutter. Let me know what you think about that idea. So there's a few pieces of art over in this little Smithsonian garden here. We are right next to the Natural History Museum, so you can imagine to see some art related to nature. We've got a dragonfly over there. This is pretty cool over here. Bee's nest. When people ask me what's in the Natural History Museum, I say it's a museum of bones, bugs, and gems. So not too much in bloom in this little garden here, but I think in about 2 weeks, the bees will be over here pollinating everything, and it will. All right, Andy is starting a petition to get a pizza museum, an entire museum to pizza. One of the things I want to do when I get my vaccine and travel post-COVID is go on a pizza tour in New York City. Now that I know that there's a pizza tour, it's all I can think about. Carlos says, Mom used to work with those back in Venezuela. Machines were brought from the US and didn't have our vowel accents or the letter N. Andy Felicati, thank you for the super chat, friend. Very much appreciated. We'll get a coffee with that afterwards to refuel. Take care, David. Thanks for tuning in. So it is a beautiful day here on the National Mall. I feel like the jacket that I wore already too much for a warm day like today. But it was a little chilly when I left my home around 10 a.m. So it was appropriate then, but I'm glad it's not freezing anymore. The last few live streams I've done have all been in the cold.